and welcome to RDA Coach's Corner. Today we have Gail Muller on the show. So Gail is a Cornish adventurer, best-selling author, keynote speaker, and a coach. But most importantly, she's my absolutely wonderful mad mate. Gail, how are you doing?
I'm great. Thanks for the brilliant intro, Josh. And it's a real pleasure to be here with you today on Coach's Corner. I've been looking forward to talking to you for a while. I'm interested in what you're going to ask me because you're always incisive, you're always thoughtful, you're always, poke around in the corners of people's brains, and that's a great thing.
Yeah, well, I did have, I know I told you previously, but I did have a listen to, so for the people that don't know, Gail has wrote two books, On Lost, which was your first book, which is great, and Do Hope, which is your most recent book. And I listened to both the other weekend while I was gardening, which was great. And it's really interesting because I've spent a lot of time with you, so I've listened to you do a lot of talks in person as well as well as writing your books. So it's really interesting to see both perspectives. But from your most recent book, I really liked it. It was almost like a new perspective on things. The book's called Do Hope, and you've almost, I say redefined, but you've almost redefined hope from this fluffy idea of what I would probably have seen hope for a long time to a more like stoic, positive, hopeful resilience. And the way I have pictured resilience most of my life, and I think quite a lot of people picture resilience, is this like David Goggins-esque push through the pain, run into a wall and keep running until you fall over and die. And this like hopeful resilience that you've come out of the woodworks with, and I guess it may not just be you, from people you've listened to before or learned from before, feels like a kind of rejection of that. And is that right? Is that what you're kind of going for here?
I think that's really interesting. You've put together a lot there, and
Yeah.
but it all marries up well. I think first I would like to take on that idea of subverting maybe a traditional resilience perspective. Now, it was no deliberate attempt on my part to rally against any modality, but I definitely, from my own lived experience, have come to understand that resilience isn't going and going and going until you fall over. And you yourself just said, run into the wall until you die. Now, interesting, there's quite a lot of effort that would go into that. There's clearly a lot of courage into that mindset that keep pushing. But to what end, my question would be, are you pushing for the sake of pushing and showing that you can't be held down? Or are you pushing in order to ultimately improve yourself, improve the life of others, or to get to where you want to be? And it's when people get hooked up on the proving and the showing out and the ego and that I'm not going to be seen to give up here, when people get trapped in that cycle of being, they lose sight of the long-term goal, which is you're being resilient because you want to get somewhere at the end. You want to develop yourself, or you want to develop your perspective, or there's just a pathway. It's not just a wall. So I learned from hitting the wall multiple times with my chronic pain, my chronic illness, with my mental health, that actually getting up, finding you've got some juice in the tank, running until the juice runs out, and then collapsing and having to go back to the beginning again and start again when you've got juice in the tank. It doesn't actually get you anywhere. You're on the same bit of path again and again and again. And it's accepting weakness. It's accepting that rest is necessary. It's accepting that you have to assimilate, gather your thoughts, integrate knowledge and learning and wisdom, and then go again. And that isn't weak. That is supreme strength and maturity and growth to be able to sit and assimilate. That's when you really can move forward. And that's what I had to do. I had to integrate my understanding of my physical shape, my kind of the shape I was in, pain wise, strength wise, and accept all of those things. All I wanted to do was to be strong, to be able to do activity over a prolonged period of time, to see a development in my body and a development in what I could achieve. And by keeping resiliently throwing myself at a wall, I was never getting there. And it was only when I realized I had to stop, gather, learn, pause, breathe, wait, that I could go the distance, and I absolutely did. So I think the idea of resilience to me, and maybe to other people over time, is knowing when to stop and sit down and have something left in the tank so that you can try again. So the resilience is the getting back up and the going again, the resilience against shame, the resilience against the feeling of weakness or having lost or being pathetic or being behind or being beta or whatever you want to call it. There's resilience of spirit in accepting pause, and then you can go again. It's foolhardy to think it's all about conquering and get it done, or however it might be. Goggins is incredible, but his resilience comes from failure too, you know, and I think he can be fairly humble about that in many ways. People give him a hard time, I think, but he's only ever being 100% himself. And he talks about his failures, he talks about his struggles, he talks about having to stop and then having to go again, and how he doesn't make the races and how he doesn't finish the ones he wanted to. That's brave, that's resilient. Yeah.
I mean, that's great. That's absolutely brilliant. And I think that full-hearted, non-stop resilience is almost romantic in a sense, and people see that and think, oh, I want to be Rambo. I guess specifically in guys as well. I think they just want to be this action movie star where they don't stop and they keep going and keep going. And that ability to stop and rest, like you said, can feel quite shameful and feel hard to do and almost more challenging than just keep running through that wall.
I'd ask why.
Yeah.
I'd ask why. So you say it, and I agree, because I mentioned it too, the idea of shame or failure or falling behind. But my question might be, what is it that you're afraid of will happen? A general you. What is it? What is the fear? What's going to happen if you stop? What's going to happen if you rest? What's going to happen if you take a week or 3 weeks or 4 weeks off or out, or a work sabbatical, or confront a difficult truth with your partner or with your boss or with your best friend, and have a difficult pause? And once you explore what the worst thing that could happen is, you might initially, when you consider that for yourself, have generic things that come up, like, well, I'll fall behind, or I'll never get it finished, or they'll forget about me, or it'll ruin everything. But underneath that is something else. And if you keep pulling that, but what's underneath that, and what's underneath that, and what's underneath that, ultimately you'll get to a limiting belief that you have about yourself, about the way the world works, about the way your social, cultural, economic environment is. But that's just your construct. That's how you're viewing it. It's not necessarily true. So then you'd need to maybe work through whether that belief is true and who you might be. This is the work of Byron Katie, is looking at the work, the title is the work, which is, who would you be without that belief? If you don't have that belief, what would you feel like? What would your day look like? What would your life be like if you weren't attached to the belief that you couldn't stop, that you have to keep going?
Yeah.
And explore that. So, we've all been there, and we'll all be there again in different ways.
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess having that conversation, that communication with yourself is super important. And I guess taking that first step to that communication is probably the hardest thing, right? Is the hardest thing to do, to be able to ask yourself, actually, what does all this mean? Why am I doing this? Because there's an unknown to that. Is that fear of why am I doing this? And also, what's going to happen if I change? I don't know, because I've never been there. I've been running to the wall for so long. So how, I guess I'm going off on a bit of a tangent here, but how would you help walk somebody through that process in terms of that fear of the unknown and taking that step? Because you've done that, right, with your, and I don't want to give away your books too much, because I think it's really important that people go and see that and read them and experience that. But you've gone from quite high level in terms of your career to going, screw it, I'm going to go do that. I'm going to go do the unknown and just hike across the world, right? So how would you help walk somebody through that with your experience?
Well, I think it always has to be led by the person you're working with or the person you're talking to, because it has to be comfortable, and it has to be led by, that person. Generically, though, I think it's quite easy to say, well, just quit your job and do it. It'll be fun. It'll be an adventure. Firstly, a lot of people don't have the actual financial stability, money saved up to be able to just fucking flip the table and go do whatever they dream of. So that's number one. You can't expect people to do that. Secondly, it's always good to double check through doing work on yourself or with a coach that the thing you think you really want. And I'm not going to be second guessing people's, dreams, but is that truly what you want, or is that somehow something you believe you want because it's what your friends have got, or society has said you want it, or your parents maybe thought it would be great for you? They might be the best parents in the world and they can see your talent and they think, oh, you'd be a great doctor, or you'd be such a great carpenter. Maybe you want to be something different, maybe you want to run trail events, or maybe you want to just be a fisherman. Whatever it is you want to be, it's about some self-exploration about what it is that lights you up. So I'd make sure when I'm working with somebody, if they want to change direction, that I'd help them really visualize where it is they want to be and why they want to be there. And then it's about taking baby steps, turtle steps, whatever you want to call it. When I was on the trails, big trails, and I'm not an athlete, never been an athlete, but I love using my body, and I'm a grinder. I will grind through to get to the end. But it's those Sherpa steps where if you're going up, you just take tiny, tiny steps. So I'd help someone see what tiny steps they could take to get where they want to be. Because to make one big leap is actually quite shocking for your nervous system, let alone for your, for your head to catch up, for your value system, for your economic viability. So little steps are always good. But another thing I'd say is that often people have areas in their life that currently exist that are already on the journey of where they really want to be. They just can't see them because the rest of life doesn't feel satisfying. But it's like pulling out the threads of the gold that's already in your life. Where do you do things that already light your spark, that you feel yourself drawn to when you have 20 minutes or a break? Or even what are you watching on Netflix? What are you doing in your spare time? What do your hobbies say about you, or your lack of hobbies say about you, about your inherent personal desires? Because you will still be doing those. And it's then, where can you do more of it? So if you are doodling when you're on the phone calls at work and you hate being on the phone calls, but you're doing really fun doodles and that makes you feel good, maybe you're not tapping into your creative artistic side. And if you just do a little bit more of that, maybe that's going to take you somewhere lovely. And that's a gentle way of getting to where you want to be. So baby steps that don't disrupt too much until you're ready to flick the switch and go full on in.
Yeah, I love that, of looking at it, what it is you're probably subconsciously already doing without realizing, and taking that. I mean, how often, like you said, a lot of the things that we desire are put on us externally, and we're very rarely looking at our internal values of who we are. And when we're working outside of those values, those inner values, that's when we feel off, right? Well, if you don't understand what your core values are and you're working outside of them, then everything feels weird, and then maybe we become depressed or stressed or whatever it is.
And that's where that initial resilience, which you spoke about, does not fucking work. Because if you're out of integrity from your core values and you're trying to do something, whether, like, say you're a banker or you're in finance, but that doesn't light you up, but your dad was, your sister is, that's what your mum does. So you keep going every day because that's what and you're good at numbers. Say you're really good at numbers, or you're good at closing deals and you're making loads of money. So everyone's like, oh, of course you're burned out. You're in a high profile job, or, but, your resilience is like, stick at it, man. Come on. You're going to get that $1 billion contract, or whatever the fuck it might be. You'll get that yacht. You'll get that car. That's what you've always dreamed of. And you think, yeah, okay, it is. Yeah, I'm just being a bit of a fucking pussy, or whatever people might say.
Yeah.
That out. Sorry, Josh. You're just being weak. Knuckle down. Do it. And that resilience is just flogging you in the direction of death and burnout, because it's not actually aligning with your core values, and it will never work. So you're not resilient, you're not weak, you're just spending all your energy in the wrong direction. So that's when you need to stop, take stock again, and think, and suddenly, I mean, it's a bit woo-woo, I guess, but it's true that when you're in flow, when you're going in the right direction for yourself, your alignment, your integrity, your values, your core being, the river will take you effortlessly-ish, because life is always slightly abrasive, but it will take you in the direction you want to go. Things will start to align and happen for you. People will say, hey, I've got this thing, maybe you want to come and XYZ, and you'll be like, wow, when I was doing finance or whatever it might be, these things never came up for me, but suddenly I'm being offered XYZ, because you've just turned like a sunflower out of the continuous hailstorm in your face that you thought you'd been resilient in. Yeah, man, so resilient, taking all this shit. Look, oh, there's the sun. Oh, this doesn't feel bad. I don't need to be so resilient now because actually I like my life.
Yeah, and I guess when you are in line with your core values and doing things towards them, you become more passionate about them, right? And then that passion towards something is get the word, but people around you are attracted to that.
It's
So then,
magnetizing.
yeah, so no wonder then you start getting offered more things, right? Because people go, God, that person's amazing. They love this. I need to get them in on the thing that they're going to love.
Yeah, and when you light up, people want you in their lives and they want you in their world because of your passion, and it feels right, doesn't it, when you're around someone who's doing what they love. Well, I've been training with you for years and I come back to you repeatedly because you are brilliant at what you do. Not only are you brilliant at what you do, but you love what you do and you are constantly curious. Every time we meet, you've learned something new or you have something new to share, not to show off. You're not a bragger. You're someone who's genuinely in love with their vocation, really. And so that's why it's a joy to keep training with you. That's not a plug for you, by the way. That was organic. Oh, cut that out. It's gross. But it is, sadly, it's true.
Thank you very much. Swiftly moving on from that.
Nothing you hate more than a compliment, buddy.
Anyway, so I was actually listening to the podcast you was in this morning, and this just kind of relates to this topic that we're talking about. And it was on a podcast called The Switch, and it was talking about taking switches in life. But there was a section in there where you were talking about how your education, so you have, I think, a degree in architecture, no, not architecture, sorry, archaeology and civilizations, humanities aspect, and then some form of broadcast. Am I right in that? Is broadcasting?
Well, archaeology, ancient classical history with some Egyptology, I think, at Warwick, and then a broadcast journalism masters.
Yeah, amazing. So there we go. So it's two.
And a PGC and some other stuff, but they don't. Yeah.
Two slightly different, very different subjects, and also, so now you're going into this space where you're an author, you're a keynote speaker, you're coaching people, and those, if you followed the route of your education into the jobs that you should have done there, you would not be where you are now. But what you did instead is you found probably like secondary benefits from each of those things. So you learned about humanity, you learned how to communicate, and then you put them into a different package altogether to put yourself in this career. And I think the important lesson with that is there's a lot of people that would have chose a specific route from such a young age and then feel stuck in that process. They feel bottlenecked into doing that thing because that's maybe what they did at uni and that's what they did wherever. And that's where they, like you said, they were told they should be a dentist because their dad was a dentist. And you've managed to take those little pieces of all of that and turn it into something else and do really good with it. How did you do it, essentially?
Well, number one is, it's really annoying to have to now dedicate my life to ADHD. But number one was thank you, ADHD. I didn't know you were there, but you were definitely keeping me looking for excitement. But so we went from archaeology and ancient classical history to broadcasting, to working as a journalist, to working with film in London, Ridley Scott's post-production house, but only as a gopher and the Oscar polisher, nothing fancy. And then fast track teaching, and I was a teacher for the European Commission, but also the UK, Hong Kong, director of academic programs, like all of these things, and then coaching, writing, speaking now, and always working with young people and adults actually for quite a long period of time. They have something in common. So that's, to get to your point, is every single one of those things, when I look back, they're all about people and how people work together and how people's minds work and how society forms. So you've got archaeology and ancient classics, that's about how the structure of society many, many years ago, how they built their cities, how they operated, their politics, etc. Gleaning bits of information from artifacts, teaching young people, the most exciting people on the planet, young brains coming into their power, the best humor, the best creativity before it's limited by life's buffeting winds to some degree. It's glorious and exciting. Walking the Appalachian Trail, people that you meet, telling their stories. So I think what I always did was unconsciously for a long time look at the threads that fascinated me and was always drawn to in some way working with people. And I imagine if other people look at their lives and the things they might have done, even if they, like you say, could look at hobbies, could look at career, there will be a thread. And if you can find the thread and then look at the thing you really want to do in the future that feels so alien, so far away, such a big switch, such a big jump, but then look at it through the eyes of the thread you know exists already in your life, whether it's you love to work with your hands and be practical, you love to be a maker, or you love to be creative and there's art or there's music throughout everything you've done somehow, or movement, you know, yoga, and suddenly you want to go and be a pro swimming athlete. There's movement inherent in that, and physiognomy, if that's the right word. So it makes that jump less scary when you realize that all you're doing is holding onto a rope but stepping over a gap. You know, you're not actually taking a flying leap, touching nothing. You still got a rope of your desire and your skill set that you are using to take yourself over, but you are going to have to use your legs to make a bigger jump than before, but it's doable because you're still holding onto the rope.
Yeah, you've got that safety there, and a lot of people don't realize they have it because they don't see all the smaller threads, I guess, in that big thing that they're doing. So like if you just looked at archaeology and thought that's it's archaeology, all I have to do is go dig sites everywhere, and maybe that's what you want to do, great. But there's actually loads of little things within that can attribute to something else, and seeing the smaller picture as well as the bigger picture is really, really important. So if you, from reading your books and just from my experience with you, I've been, as I said, I've been quite lucky to not only read your books but be present at multiple of your talks. You a lot. I've seen you talk a lot.
I know, but you've also, just like to note to whoever's listening, you've also seen me, because let's be real, have multiple like meltdowns, crying episodes, huffs, rages through coaching me. And you know, with like bringing yourself to training, when a human brings themselves to a training coach, you're not just training my muscles, you know, you create a space where people are allowed to just be themselves. So yeah, you've seen me in all modalities, I think. And I'm not ashamed of any of them. Some of them have been pretty, but Dad died and I came straight to training because I needed to keep going, and that was a lot of grief for you to hold in a space to train with me. And I think that I just wanted to say that, because like no one's got their shit together all the time. No ducks are ever fully in a row. If one row of ducks is straight, you've kept your eye off another row of ducks who are all fucking now going around in circles. So we're all look like we're doing well, but everyone's got a wobbly plate somewhere.
Well, this is one of the reasons why I wanted to get you on, because I haven't just experienced the best-selling author, keynote speaker Gail. You know, I've also experienced Gail, and you are human just like the rest of us. So, which shows that also that means as a coach, that you're going to have so much more understanding than somebody that hasn't been through that stuff. So you have the toolkit necessary to give to people because you are just normal like the rest of us, which is amazing, right?
Normal, lol.
Yeah, and you know, you've dealt with, goddamn, a lifetime of trauma, which you've wrote about, right? You've dealt with a lot of stuff, but you have a phenomenal ability to transform it into fuel for positive change in your own life. You've managed to take those moments and, as heartbreaking as they are, turn that into something great for yourself to move yourself forwards. And I guess for other people, how would you suggest and I'm stealing this from you, how they would use their bad bits and turn them into superpowers? It's hard question. I'm sorry.
It is. It's okay. It's a hard question because when you're in the bad bit, they just feel like bad bits. So it's often trite to just roll out which I have in the past, you know, your broken bits are your superpowers, because when they're just your broken bits, they're really fucking broken and they hurt and they don't seem very useful. But I love the poet Khalil Gibran, who wrote The Prophet a long time ago, and he writes in different sections in the book as he's speaking to a group of people, and they ask him questions, and tell us about this, tell us about that, and he talks about, in one of them they say, tell us about joy and sorrow, and one of the lines in the little poem that he speaks to them, and says, the deeper that sorrow carves into your being, the more joy you can contain. So it's exactly that symbiotic thing. It's that every broken bit carves a deeper level of empathy that you can have when you return back to the land of the living. So you have to go into the underworld to grab the gift of empathy, to come back up with it. And it's a hard-earned gift when someone is able to truly be empathetic with you, and to understand and be alongside you in your difficulty without putting their own difficulty in, or their story, or just to sit with you in your grief or your struggle or your confusion. And to know what that might be like is a gift. And it normalizes, it makes space for people to fall apart. And if you can exemplify that you're not perfect, that you have fallen apart, you've come back from that place with gifts of learning, knowledge, and empathy, you know you'll fall apart again, but you already have evidence that you will come back from that with gifts. And it's scary, but we're all going to go there at some point and have a break, whatever it is, a break in our confidence, etc. It's then that you realize that it's not to be frightened of. So the broken bit when you're in it is awful, but if you can try to believe that it is delivering you into a new place, like birth pain, like we don't remember being born, but it was awful, but look what happened, it was great on the other side. It's just like that process. So I try, but if you've never had a huge life issue before, and people can sometimes get to their 30s, their 40s, and have had a blessed experience. Of course they're going to have ups and downs, but nothing cataclysmic, and thank goodness for them that they don't. But it does mean when they get to that point, they don't have the toolkit to know what's happening. So if you're able to hold space and share experience with them, that it's going to be awful but okay, then that's a good thing to be able to do. But you can't live anybody else's experience for them, and you can't try to take their pain away. Sometimes all you can do is be present whilst they're there, and be a guide to just walk at their pace through it.
Yeah.
Does that make sense, Josh?
No, it makes complete sense. I mean, everybody deals with things it has a different capacity to deal with different stresses, right? And I'm realizing that in my own relationships with other people, that just because I deal with something in one way, that actually that's not the same for everybody else. Especially in my marriage, right? It's something it takes a long time to learn, but it's great, and you've got to sit back and let people deal with it in their way, and just help walk alongside them. And if your story is going to help, then great. Do you find it gets easier, or do you find it's still the same amount of pain, but you recover quicker?
That's a good question. I think because I'm in midlife at 46, I now think I maybe understand the phrase midlife crisis a little more. Because it seems to be a time when everything happens at the same time. I lost a parent, my other parent's vital and brilliant, but becoming older, because they do. It's what we all do. Thankfully, we get older, and we've got those years still to live. But also, your hormones change when you're a woman, things become complicated. You might decide you want a different career, which, is something I started to move into. So lots of things happen at once. My ADHD diagnosis was late, and that was a lot to manage. So in the last couple of years, I've had another surge of complicated things to manage all at once. Now, I don't think it's necessarily that you recover quicker or that it gets easier, because you recover So like grief, you can't rush. It's its own beast, and it will just noodle along with you, and it will do what it wants. It's like a rescue dog. You never know when it's going to bite you or whether it's going to be absolutely lovely sleeping in its basket, but you love it anyway. And the other stuff, you know, it takes as long as it takes, whether you're sorting out medication or whatever, people are getting divorced and, you know, you're helping your mates. But what I do find is that I always had an inherent belief that everything would be all right, which is the hope. You know, you can't predict what it's going to look like on the other side of these problems, but you can have the hope that if you just carry on every day, every hour, every minute, being the best person you can, showing up with everything you can, putting as much good in the world as you can, even when you've got nothing, you can put, you know, a millimeter of goodness, pick up a wrapper off the floor and put it in the bin, someone else's wrapper. That's all you managed to do for a day. You've added to the accumulative good in the world, you know, just incrementally move forwards. Then things, so all of those things add towards this idea that things will be okay in the end, because you're trying to put cumulative good in the world. So I've always had that belief. But when the 2 years of chaos happened, I knew, because I'd been there before and had tools, that it would be okay on the other side. So it didn't get easier, it didn't get quicker, but I had an inherent knowledge from evidence that it was going to be okay. I just had to go through it. That's another thing I learned. You can't avoid, you just can't. I mean, that's really definitive, isn't it? You can't. You shouldn't. I don't know. I really don't think you can avoid yourself. You cannot. You can put it in a box for a really long time. You can drink through it. You can take drugs through it. You could sleep around on it. You can move country on it. You can do whatever to yourself, you know, but wherever you go, there you fucking are. And there's only so long you can run from yourself. So I've always been of the belief, and it's my makeup, that I will go through things. I will face things. I have inherent, really, I can't be any other way, sadly, otherwise I might have been. But I just look straight in the face of terrible things and I go, okay, how big are you? Where's your edges? How long is this going to take? How much is this going to hurt? I'm coming in. Because I know I can't get around the sides, and I know that if I turn around and run away, it will just be there. So I just go through it. And it's the very best way, is to go through. It's shorter. It's like, you know, imagine you have like a really long wall in a fantasy book, whatever, or the Great Wall of China. Imagine if you tried to go around the Great Wall of China, how long you'd be going and how tired you'd get and how awful it would be. And if you just stayed in one place, chipped away at the wall in front of you, eventually you'd get a few loose bricks and you'd be through to the other side, and you'd be like, oh, that wall's shit, but I'm through. Yeah, the other you's still going. Walking. And at the end, it's got to go through the wall anyway.
Yeah, exactly. That's brilliant. And that's such, I love that. And you kind of touched on it. I think a lot of that requires you to be honest with yourself and communicate with yourself correctly. And you talk a lot about the bravery of honesty and how important that communication is. When it comes to coaching, I find one of the most challenging things, but can be really, really rewarding, is when you get a client to be honest with themselves, which it can be super hard. So I have two questions here. And one, has there been moments where you've been honest with yourself and it's made a huge impact? And how did you make those steps to that honesty?
Oh, that's quite timely. I've recently had to be honest with myself about something, and it was difficult. I was going to write on my Substack about this when I come back, but it's only interesting to me. But well, I'm a constant lesson in relearning my own wisdom. You know, like it's not a one and done thing living, is it? You just like, oh yeah, that's that thing I realized 20 years ago and forgot all about. So the resilience thing about pushing through, and I can do everything, and I just keep going. So I felt overwhelmed in the last couple of months. It was no surprise. My brain is overwhelming anyway. It's glorious. I love my brain, but sometimes it has so many thoughts. I need another 10 heads to put all the thoughts in. So I was feeling like, gosh, it's that never-ending list of so many things to do, and everybody else seems to be getting on with everything brilliantly, and it's just because of my brain and blah, blah, blah. And then I started to write down all of the things. I was like, right, what do I do in a typical week or 2 weeks? Why am I feeling like there's never any time? And then I looked at the list, and actually, so I still have chronic pain, just not as big as it used to be. I have ADHD. I have, because of my neurodiversity, I think, you know, it's likely that I'll be assessed for autism, and there's, you know, broad spectrum autism is very much a potential thing for me. But so I looked at the list of stuff across a month. I think I tried to put out like most of the things in a month, and I would say a third, 20%, maybe a fifth to a quarter maybe, is making repeated phone calls to the chemist about repeat prescriptions that I have to phone up for every month for my ADHD meds that may or may not be in stock because of the government. Then I go down there and wait in the queue at the chemist, but then they didn't actually join up the dots, and that part of it hasn't arrived. So it's on owed, and I have to go back in 2 days. But then I've got to sort out the dog, and the dog walks around that, and any meetings I have to change because I have to go back to the chemist. Then there's the check-ins about my ADHD with the psychiatrist, but that's annual. But then the doctor wants to know also, is it the right meds and is it safe? And then there's the physiotherapist, the chiropractor, regular appointments. Then there's my rehab stuff for my body. Then there's, you know, how do I feel hormonally with perimenopause? And, you know, have I put my estrogen patch on? When's my period coming now? Because it's all over the place. Oh, I've got PMDD and endometriosis, apparently, because I have neurodiversity. So then I have to see a doctor about that. So all of my life, since I was in my 20s, there have been hospital appointments, maybe, or specialist appointments, or my pain management needs to be looked at. So today I wake up and I can do loads of deadlifts and run, which I did. A week ago, I might wake up and I have a pain flare up, and then migraines that knock on for a day and a half, and I can't move. So in answer to your question, sum all that up, I've had to be honest with myself, and I sat my mum and sister down, who came to help me recently, to like look at, you know, whoa, you've got a lot of things you're doing. Let's see if we can all pull our brains together. And I said to them, guys, I'm going to have to say this out loud. And I cried, I choked up and said, I think really I have to be honest and say, I'm a disabled person. There's elements of me that are disabled. I have to every day manage different medications, doctors, chemists, pain levels, bodily issues, you know, shoulder. Some days I'm 1,000%. Other days I'm not, with no explanation, because I have a chronic, you know, pain condition. And it made me cry, but it felt liberating, because I'm like, why am I ashamed and thinking I might be categorized as a disabled person? Why have I resisted that and given myself a hard time, when actually I end up doing more than most people? Like, I'm doing so many things, that when I can't do 20% of that stuff, I feel like I've failed. But if I put on a different pair of glasses and accept with radical honesty that as a disabled person that has unpredictable levels of pain, focus, concentration, I'm doing incredibly fucking well, managing a home, multiple businesses, doing successfully in all of them, writing best-selling books, speaking all over the world, you know, all of those things. Wow. And it's not degrading my ability or my accomplishments by admitting that in some ways I have a disabled presence in the world. It's actually making them even more fucking impressive. And it's not weak to say that I am. It's resilient to accept it and to say, hell, look what I can do with these things on board. And if I accept it, I can then better help other people accept and come to terms with things like that are difficult. So no coach is a fully formed, perfect being. Nobody who's useful at helping other people has got it all sorted, because by the very nature of saying you're together and you're sorted now, you have stopped learning and you have stopped exploring the human condition. So I take great joy in meeting my own obstacles and dismantling them, learning and going again. And it's every coach who's a good coach is doing the same thing. So yeah, that's something I haven't shared before, and that's the first time I've articulated it out loud, aside from my family. So I hope it made sense. It's a journey I'm currently on, and it's a brave one, and I'm proud.
Firstly, thank you for sharing that. That's great. Yeah, that's great. You know, it takes a lot to be able to share things like that, and I think it will hopefully help inspire other people that may be struggling in that situation. So thank you very much. Firstly, I'm aware that we don't have much time. So what I normally do is with RDA, we like to give everybody some piece of tool, information, something that they can do within 24 hours to help themselves. We like to give people something. So we've had very big topics that we talked about, and you know, once again, you've told a beautiful story that's going to inspire lots of people. But as is Gail Muller's way. So, what would you suggest, and it can be to do with anything, to maybe build hopeful resilience or be more honest with themselves that somebody can do within the next 24 hours? Just even something tiny and minuscule.
Okay. All right. For the next 24 hours, some of those you'll be asleep. Okay, obviously. But for the next however many that you're awake of 24 hours, every single time you feel that little tingle of happiness, joy, excitement, or you know that moment when you're driving in your car and a song comes on the radio that you like and you go, oh, and you turn it up. That feeling, whether it's that you've seen a picture in a gallery or you've heard a bit of music or you're laughing at someone's joke or someone offers something like meet for a drink or do this or see this movie and you go, oh, that sounds great. Notice what are the things that really give you that little tiny tickle in your tummy and draws you to them. Write it down. And at the end of 24 hours, have a little post-it note or just a tiny little, you know, like Columbo detective notepad. I love Columbo so much. I'd have married Columbo. One more thing, man. Anyway, write down the things that tickle you. It doesn't have to make any sense. It could be small corgi eating a melon, whatever it might be that you see out of the window. I don't know how the corgi got the melon. That's a short story. It could be anything. Sunshine through the cloud, that bush, that tree. And then at the end of the day, look at it and you'll begin to collect a whole list of the vibe that really lights you up, and you'll begin to see common threads and common themes. If you can't identify what it is that brings you joy and who you really are and what you really love, what you should be doing with your life, just listen to your body and brain signals and collect it, and then it will grow and form in front of you. You will create the new book of you if you pay attention to what brings you joy.
I love that. You always have such a wonderful take on things and how to improve yourself, and is a thing that like most people will give me some standard by the book thing to change your life, and that is such a different perspective that I think so many people need to do. I mean, I need to do it, you know what I mean?
Yeah, brilliant.
Yeah.
Do it.
Gail, what you got going on? Where can people find you? What's all of this stuff?
Well, you can find me at gailmuller.com.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, baby. Lots of stuff is on there. Articles, my coaching stuff, my ventures. There, I'm also on Instagram. I also have a Substack, which has had a pause, but it's about to start again. Well, it is starting from next week, and that is called Unfuck Your Life. And a podcast soon to come. But find me at gailmuller.com, send me an email, join my Substack, and I have retreats on the go. The one in September is nearly full now, but there's one in November, Wild Words and Water here in Cornwall. So yeah, come find me and say hi. And it's been a joy as always, Josh, talking to you. We never get to talk to this level because you're just going shush and pick up that weight.
Yeah. Normally I'm just telling you what to do. So this has been lovely. I really enjoyed it. And guys, Gail is a coach. Hit her up if you want more absolute wisdom like this. And
I'd love to coach some people who want to get a little bit more unstuck.
Yes, brilliant. Right, I'm now going to turn off the recording.
Is that going to be in the record? I need that to be in the recording. I am now going to turn off the recording.